Hello, friends and knife nerds. Today we have the Kershaw Launch 15, model number 7950. This knife is fun. I am very pleased with this knife. I wasn't sure how happy I was going to be. This is my first knife in the Launch series, and I really had heard good things, so I wanted to try them, and they have all different kinds of different models to try, but I like the way this one looked the best. I like the features it had the best, so this was my first dive into that series, and based on this knife, I will be diving back in for another model. Kershaw really knocked out of the park, if you ask me. That is snappy, and it's a real handsome knife. So let's get into it. You may actually, I'll say this for the people who are new here. I think I explained this once in a Miguron video, but you may notice I am missing a part of my pinky, so I just wanted to give you a quick explanation here. This is on my left hand. Thankfully, it's not on my dominant hand, but it's still a pain in the butt. This happened at work. I was working on a machine with somebody, and they decided to not tell me when they were turning the machine off, which caused a conveyor to lower and crush my finger and rip it off. So we tried to keep the finger. They sewed it back on, but it didn't take, and I had to have it removed. So the last, I would say, 3 months of my life have been getting used to that. That out of the way, let's get into the knife. I'm happy to talk about it. If you have any questions below, leave a comment. This is a great knife, as I was explaining. Let's get into some of the specs here. The handle itself is black anodized aluminum, and they have this really nice tan canvas micarta inlaid on both sides. The pivot you can see on this side, and then the button right there. And depress the button, and it'll fold right back in. I got a little bit of jimping on the bottom, which looks nice. I'm not exactly sure of the functionality there, but it does look cool. The clip on it is deep carry tip up, and they have T6 screws here. The rest look to be T8. This knife is very comfortable in hand when it's closed, and very comfortable in hand when it's open. They've got nice jimping up here on what they're calling a spear point blade, and I see why, of course. It is a spear point, but I really want to call it a drop point because of just how useful this blade really is. One side sharp, which is how I would prefer it on a knife like this. It really adds to an everyday carry function. I don't just need something for poking. I need something that's going to slice, and being able to rest my finger on top of the blade is useful for a guy like me. So let's get into some of the length here. This, they say this knife is 8.25 inches according to the website overall, which makes it a nice full-size knife, which is kind of one of my qualifications. Unless I'm looking for something smaller generally, I like a full-size knife. And it feels very good in hand. This jimping is necessary, and it's functional. It feels really good. The blade length here is the handle length is 4.75 inches from end to end here, tip to stern. And then on the blade itself, we have 3.75 inches, a nice long blade, just under 4 inches, which here in Connecticut, that is a legal length to carry. But I know under 3 inches, and it's crazy around the world. I don't know why these things are illegal. They're tools. But my personal opinion. Let's get into a few comparisons here real quick. Just bring out some familiar faces so you can get an idea. We'll bring out a nice, decently large knife here in the Paramilitary 2. Looks just about identical if we line them up at the pivot here. Yeah, I mean, you can see this has a slightly longer blade, but the Paramilitary has a slightly longer handle. And then let's bring out the Boker Kalashnikov here. Let's put it at pivot. That's about pivot. So maybe that's a little bit more equal. I was lining up with the button stock. I'm sorry, the pivot's a little higher. So if we line up at pivot, that is definitely a shorter knife, but still a very comfortable knife. I love this thing. For the dollar, the Kalashnikov is a great answer. So there you go. There's one comparison. Let's bring out a couple more contenders here. Now, I want to bring out one of my new favorite EDCs, another Kershaw. They have been knocking it out of the park, in my opinion, so I am so happy with Kershaw lately. Yeah. This comes in just a hair smaller, but still a full-size knife. I think that's like just over 7.5 inches-ish. And then we'll bring in the pyrite. That is definitely a smaller knife, but the large pyrite, the XL, is probably about the same as this. And let's give one more comparison here. We'll bring out the Griptilian. One of my favorites, of course. Looks slightly smaller, and yes, another excellent knife, the Lawman, which I'm sure some or many of you have. That is comparable size-wise as well. This is at least a little bit longer than most, it looks, but not by a lot. You can see a lot of full-size knives. Yeah, so hey, that's cool. This is a large knife, and the blade steel here I'm particularly happy with. This model comes with Magna Cut. You know, they are calling it the Grail steel right now because of the fact, I think it's actually like 1.2% carbon, I believe, which is a very high amount of carbon. Usually they keep it under 1%. And the chromium content in Magna Cut is, I think it's 10.25-ish, or maybe it's 10.75-ish. It's a number that barely makes it stainless, but it is still corrosion resistant. And Magna Cut is one of those steels that is, they call it a Grail steel because it really finds the sweet spot for corrosion resistance, stainlessness, and toughness. Did I say that right? We have hardness, toughness, and corrosion resistance. That's kind of the holy trinity in knives. So Magna Cut is right in the middle there, and it is an excellent steel. Good on any knife. The ergonomics here, as I mentioned, are excellent. And one of the reasons this knife is so cool is because of its EDC usability. It's not just a dagger-shaped knife meant for poking. They put a spear point on this, but I mean, this is clearly made for everyday use. And I am so happy Kershaw did that. I am just extremely happy with this knife. It is also an ambidextrous knife, as you can see here. You can flip the clip right over, and you're ready to go. This, they have a nice little, you can see, canvas micarta backspacer here. They kind of slip that in there as a nice little aesthetic piece. But I am very happy with this knife, and I think Kershaw did a great job, and I will be introducing myself to more launch series in the future. Kershaw, great job.